Well, 50 years of the
agree, whether we disagree. I prefer to disagree because I think it's better radio. I don't like agreeing with people. I like to debate. But anyway, the guy we have with us in studio, of course, you know him as a columnist for the RJ. I read plenty of his articles. Victor Jake's joining us right now in studio. Victor, thank you so much for being here, my man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Good to finally meet you. I read a lot of your articles. Sometimes I agree with you. Sometimes I disagree with you. But I figured what better person to have in and chalk it up and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Can you tell people, so you've been in Vegas for a long time, right? Over 10 years?
Yeah, since 2009. I came right as everything was collapsing to the ground. So.
Wow. So you've been here for a while, and you've been at the RJ for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
Always covered politics.
Yeah, I've always written a column. So.
Always interested you. Politics, you always had a passion for politics?
Yeah, for some reason I was the crazy kid, in junior high and high school listening to talk radio.
Were you really?
Yeah.
I started listening to, so I had to listen to talk radio. My first job in radio, I was on a station that aired Sean Hannity, right?
Okay, yeah.
So I had to do top and bottom of the hour newscast. So I was forced to. And then I feel like I don't know, how old are you?
39.
Okay, 39. I'm 42. So you're close to my age. We're both old, right? We're getting there. You're pushing the big 4-0.
Wait, you got to think about how old you are. You're old.
Exactly. I feel like in my early 30s, it's when I really started to watch Fox News, CNN, and then form my own opinions. But so cool. You've been doing this a while. I would imagine you enjoy covering the local and national political scene.
Well, it is. It's for some people, politics, you just get the bug and you enjoy it. And this is a great job because I don't have to raise money. I don't have to say things I don't believe in order to get elected. So I just get to think about the politics.
Well, that is the beauty of this country, isn't it? To have the freedom of speech, to be able to speak your mind and be opinionated. I do it every day. Sometimes when I call people jackasses, not you, it feels good. Anyway, all right. So why don't we start on the national scene first? And then I know you're very passionate and you talk a lot about the Clark County School District and just education and teachers in general. We'll get to that maybe in the second segment. I know you're a big Ron DeSantis fan. I want to pick your brain on this. I am not, and I'll give you the reasons why. Yeah, but you talk about how you're a family man, right? You're a Christian.
Yep.
Help me understand this. When he sent those people, those migrants, on a plane to Martha's Vineyard for a political purposes, let's be honest, he didn't do it because he cared about them. Help me understand. Is that Christian? Because I felt like that was despicable. Help me understand that.
So what happens when people come here illegally? They aren't coming here to stay in El Paso or they come to Florida and stay in whatever town they arrive in. They're seeking to go into different parts of the country. And so that's why you're getting all of these bus trips to New York. Oftentimes what people want to do, they come here, they have family, they want to get to the family. And so what happened with that case, obviously it was a political stunt. He's trying to make a point politically. But there are people who are looking to travel to the interior of the country, and so he found those people. He sent them on a charter jet, which is very nice.
With flyers.
Sends them to one of the richest parts of the country. So, I guess sending someone to a vacation spot doesn't strike me as particularly cruel.
But he did it for political purposes. He didn't do it because he wanted those people to, be on vacation. I mean, you admit that, right? He did it for political purposes. You had a pregnant woman. You had a child. These were migrants, not, dangerous criminals. I think we all could agree on that. They were seeking asylum. And I understand what you're saying, and there are issues. I agree the border is a big issue. It is a crisis. I've never said it wasn't. But I've also said it's been a crisis for decades and decades and decades. And when people say, well, the Biden administration, it's as worse as it's ever been. Okay, but that's not going to solve the problem, right? We've had these issues for decades and decades and decades. And I'm not sure putting a bunch of migrants on a plane and sending them to Martha's Vineyard is going to help. It's only going to make things worse. And I just feel like that's dehumanizing people. Am I wrong in saying that? I don't think that's Christian what he did.
Well, I don't agree with your take on it. I mean, you look at the numbers. I mean, there's a couple things that I want to address.
Sure.
There's more apprehensions along the southwest border last year than there was during the entire Trump administration. So, you can say, oh, it's always been a problem. Obviously, it's always been a problem. But the scope of the problem is dramatically different. And why is it not changing? Why is it not the crisis that you say it is, that most people say it is? Well, there's no political pressure, right? Like, you've got to put political pressure on the White House, on Democrats in Congress to take action.
What do you think they should do? Because I don't hear a lot of solutions from Republicans. Where's the solution?
Easy. So what happens right now is people are coming across the border, and most of the time they're going to the Border Patrol and they're turning themselves in and they're applying for asylum. And what they're hoping is that they will get released into the country while they wait for their hearing date, which, because the system is so backlogged, could be a couple of years. Well, once you're in, right? Because no one's coming to kick you out unless you commit a pretty serious crime. And so what happened during the Trump administration is they said, okay, you can come apply for asylum, but you're going to wait in Mexico while we process and adjudicate your claim. Because what's happening is people are coming and they don't have a legitimate asylum claim. They want to move because economically they can do a lot better here. And I don't blame them for that. I have a lot of sympathy for people who want to do that, but that's not a valid asylum claim. And so what happens is they know if I come and if I get released, I'm here, I'm in. And so what the Remain in Mexico policy did is it told people, if you have a valid asylum claim, come, your claim will be processed and eventually you'll get in. If you don't have a valid claim, you're not going to get into the United States. You're going to stay in Mexico. They're going to say your claim's not valid, then you're going to go back.
So in layman's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What happened basically is the people without valid claims stopped coming, and that was the key distinction. Is that,
and that's why more people are crossing the border illegally, and hence.
Yeah, because Joe Biden basically has, rhetorically has said, "Oh, the border's closed, don't come in," but for all practical purposes, the border is wide open, and if you want to come right now and take your chances, because you're not going to get a better chance than you have right now.
I don't know if I'd characterize it as being wide open. Certainly, could there be better security and policy differences and opinions as far as Joe Biden and his administration? Absolutely. I don't know if I'd characterize it as wide open, but with that being said, I think criticism is fair, but Democrats and Republicans have to come together and come up with solutions, and I don't see that happening right now. Hence, putting people on a plane to Martha's Vineyard, that's not going to change anything. Democrats, Republicans, I think you'll agree with me, need to come to the table and come up with some solutions. I blame both sides for the issue.
Well, I mean, I have to take a little bit of disagree with you a little bit on the efficacy, even if you don't like the stunt. Joe Biden went and visited the border. It's something that he's starting to address and say, oh, hey, by the way, maybe this is a bad idea. And so you've got, the mayor of New York City responding to the bus trips from Texas, and actually states like Colorado are sending migrants to New York City, saying, hey, we can't do this. 1,000, 1,700 people, we can't do this. It's like, these towns are getting like thousands of people a day, and you're in New York City, you can't handle 1,700 people.
I think you can make the case that both sides at times use it for political gain. I didn't like it when Donald Trump said we're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. The wall was never finished, and Mexico never paid for it. The problem that I have, both sides of the aisle never bring this up. The overwhelming majority of people that are undocumented in this country are not those that cross the border. They're those that overstay their visas. Why is it I never hear Republicans talking about that?
I think that's fine to talk about. I mean,
I never hear Donald Trump talking about it. I never hear Ron DeSantis talking about it. And listen, I get it. That's a crisis. I've never said otherwise. I know there's a lot of, even though I'm not a Democrat, there's a lot of Democrats that won't admit it's a crisis. It's a crisis. It has been for a long time. It's getting worse. I agree with that. I agree with Republicans when they say that. But again, people overstaying their visas. Never want to talk about that. I also don't like it when people demonize Donald Trump. These people, they're rapists, and I suppose some of them are good people. We know for a fact that the overwhelming majority of these people, even though we have the fentanyl issue, and yes, there is a small percentage of these undocumented people that are criminals. I wish they weren't, but I think we can agree, at least I hope, that the overwhelming majority of these people are not horrendous people that are going to rape your children and kidnap your kids, right? Can we agree on that?
I mean, look, I think it's always a mistake to put percentages on it because, it's a huge number of people. We're talking about millions of people. So you can always find examples of people who want to come here and work hard, and examples of people who want to come here and loaf or have committed a crime. And so what I think you would want in an immigration system is where you accept people from the first category and not the second category.
I don't disagree with you at all. I just don't like it when people generalize. And you know this. If you hear Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson, all they do is demonize brown people. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just going to call it for what it is. I'm not fans of this.
I don't agree with that. So
every day, if you watch the Laura Ingraham television show, all she does is demonize these people, undocumented, as they're going to do this to you, they're going to do that to you, and Donald Trump did that. We have to come up with solutions, and I don't think solutions are making a broad stroke and demonizing all these people as these horrendous people when many of them are not. They're good people.
Well, it's ironic because I think we actually tend to agree on the people who are crossing the border, but I think you're generalizing there about what Tucker and Laura would have to say. So,
All right.
I mean, I think if you want to talk about solutions, I mean, you've
Yeah.
got to look at I mean, you want to go back to the overstay and the visa issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the solution to that?
I have one.
I'd love to hear it. Go ahead.
And I know you might not like this, and maybe I believe we need to put some sort of bracelet, whether that be an ankle bracelet. You're not a criminal, but we're giving you an opportunity to come into the the best, in my opinion, the best country in the world. You need to abide by this and keep this on you. Now, it'll cost money, but it's costing America more money for a lot of other things that we waste. Put an ankle bracelet on them so we know where they are. Again, I know that's expensive, and the money's got to come from somewhere. I think that would solve the problem immediately because we would know where all these people are.
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge you have, right, is
Yeah.
the interior enforcement. Is at any time there's been an effort by the government to say, we know someone's here illegally, they haven't committed a second crime, and we're going to physically remove them. Politically, it's just a tough situation to be in.
Do you believe that, though? Do you believe if you're a family, and yes, I understand crossing the border illegally is a crime. I get that. But if someone has been here 5 years, 10 years, maybe has a wife, maybe has kids, should those people be deported?
So right, I mean, you're making the case about
Yeah.
why interior enforcement is so hard, even for visa overstays. Is that
Right.
and oftentimes people are sympathetic. I mean, my personal feeling is that if I could make everything happen at once, there's a case for a general amnesty about people who have been here. But
Right.
the problem is you can't make everything happen at once.
Right.
And so what happens is that when the border is open, whether that's because there's not a wall or more specifically the use of the asylum issue, is that when you put the amnesty first, all it does is it causes the problem to get bigger because people are saying, I got to get there because the amnesty's happening.
Yeah, we don't want that either, and that's a good point. I think there needs to be middle ground, right, Victor? If you're not a serious criminal now and you're undocumented, let's figure out some pathway to citizenship. I don't think if you're undocumented, you should be allowed to have a driver's license. I don't think you should be allowed to have a bank account. You have to pay a penalty, but we have to have some sort of pathway to citizenship. On the other side of things, let's make it a little bit easier for people to come here legally. I think that's also a long process at times, too. I think we need more security at the border. No question about it. But I think if we just, and this is just my opinion, if we just blame the Joe Biden administration, plenty of criticism for the Biden administration when it comes to this issue, very fair. But if we just blame Democrats and we just blame Joe Biden, nothing's going to get done. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure who else is responsible, given that Democrats have been running, everything for the last couple of years.
But illegal immigration, I know we talked about this earlier, but we've had this issue going way back for decades and decades. George W. Bush administration, Bill Clinton. Can you make the argument that, yes, more people are crossing the border illegally now than ever before? Sure. But the point I'm trying to make is it's not just a Democrat problem. It's not just a Republican problem. This is an American problem that needs to be addressed. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I guess if you want to broaden it out and say it's a problem that affects the whole country, I certainly agree with you. I mean, the challenge is that this is a winning political issue for Democrats, right? I mean, the reason that the amnesty for the Dreamers, for people who've been brought here illegally as kids, has a hard time going anywhere is if that happens, Democrats lose it as an issue, right? Remember Donald Trump, the great build the wall guy, anti-immigrant guy, he offered a very expansive amnesty for people brought here illegal, somewhere on the orders of, I think, 1.8 million people, in exchange just for some border wall funding. Democrats rejected it. And so you have to look at it and say, where's the political incentive? The political incentive is not for Democrats to solve the problem, even in that one case scenario, because what they want is they want to use the Dreamers, people brought here illegally as kids, as a leverage point for a broader amnesty. And that's why you haven't seen, in my opinion, progress on areas where I think there is generally more agreement.
Victor Jakes joining us in studio from the Review Journal. We mentioned Ron DeSantis. I want to pick your brain on this a little bit further because, like you said, you're a Ron DeSantis fan. I have a problem with, Disney coming out and disagreeing with Ron DeSantis. And I know a lot of Republicans don't want to call it the Don't Say Gay bill, and we can talk a little bit more and further about that. But Disney was vocal and outspoken. So what does Ron DeSantis do? He puts in policy to cost them money. In my personal opinion, that's like a dictatorship. We can't do that, Republican or Democrat. How did you feel about that? In someone that supports Ron DeSantis, do you support a governor in office, and if somebody doesn't like you or says, I don't like that policy, let's go after them and put laws in place that can tax them?
Well, I mean, what happened is just a little bit different, right? They had a special taxing district, and basically DeSantis said, no, that's going to come back under public control. And so I disagree a little bit with your characterization.
Victor, you know what happened. You know he went after Disney.
Yeah.
You know what happened. You're a smart guy. You know he did that because he didn't like Disney vocally coming out against him. And to me, that is a very dangerous precedence.
So let me ask you. So I think what's happening here, and generally in a vacuum where everyone respects the free market, I would agree with you. Mm-hmm. We're no longer in this vacuum. And I think this is the divide you're seeing a lot of times in the Republican Party is there are people who say, well, the principle says we shouldn't do this. But and then the other people say, yeah, but the other side is doing it. They're working the ratchet. And unless you punch back, the ratchet never stops. And if you've been looking, I'm sure you've been following the Twitter files.
Of course.
Where you have the government going to a company and saying, you will censor these people. And there's been far less outrage about that, about the government, at least among the national mainstream media and on the left, the government going to a private company and saying, censor these people, take away their First Amendment rights on your platform.
Well, I know you've talked a lot about Elon Musk, and that's...
No. Can I finish this thought?
Sure.
And so what conservatives are saying is, yeah, I want the free market, but when the other side is actively working to undermine it and destroy it and is weaponizing corporations against the principles we stand for, at some point we have to punch back. And at some point we have to punch back. And if you want to look at a very mild way to punch back, taking away someone's special privileged taxing district is a very mild way to punch back. And that's the situation that I think we're in. If the left agrees, yeah, we should just let corporations be. We shouldn't make them the tools to advance our political agenda, oftentimes in coercion or in collusion with the government. Yeah, let's step away from it. I'm thrilled with that.
I agree with your sentiment.
That's not the situation we're in right now.
I agree with your sentiment. Donald Trump did the exact same thing when he was president. He went after companies that didn't like him. You know that. So I disagree with it's just one side of the aisle. As far as
why don't you offer some examples?
Sure. The gas companies, I can go on my phone right now and I can Google what companies did Donald Trump go after. You'll see a list of companies and you'll see a list of his quotes where he's talking about these companies. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do this. Why? You're the president of the United States because they made comments and they don't like you or they don't like some of your policies. So you're going to come out and you're going to talk about that. I just don't think it's a place for a politician. I understand your sentiment, but I think it goes both ways. I agree with you. I don't think Ron DeSantis should do it. As far as censoring conservatives, when we talk about Twitter, it's a private company. If Elon Musk wanted to, well, I mean, but it is.
Okay, the Twitter files, what the Twitter files showed is that
the government involvement. I understand.
You can't just like blow it off like, oh, the government's involved. The FBI, the White House is, not directly sometimes, but through intermediaries saying, ban these people, lower their reach, take away their platform. And Twitter is like, okay, eventually, they had a pushback initially, and then eventually it's like, okay, you're just going to send me names and I'm going to just smoke their accounts. Like, that's a problem. And that should be something that's like, I don't know, full-scale national crisis.
So the government should not be involved in private business and what private businesses want to do. But the point I make is if Elon Musk wanted to get rid of every single Democrat and liberal on Twitter, he'd be allowed to do that because it's a private company and he owns it. I agree with you, but there are a lot of issues because I know you've talked about the Hunter Biden situation when it comes to the government and all this other stuff. There were also a lot of conservatives, and still are today, that spread misinformation about Hunter Biden, that he was having sex with underage girls. He is under investigation right now. And by the way, he's never been a politician, so I don't know why Republicans keep wanting to talk about this. He's a screw-up. He's a drug addict, a guy that probably hung out with a lot of hookers. I get that. But until somebody shows me actual evidence that Joe Biden broke the law, which I haven't seen at all, and there's been nothing in regards to that, he's a private citizen. Why are Republicans so obsessed with Hunter Biden's laptop? I guess that's my question.
Well, because there's evidence that Joe Biden was financially benefiting from Hunter's shady business transactions.
Where is that? Where can I find that information?
Well, Hunter's former business partner in an interview before the election talked about how 10% for the big guy was Joe Biden.
Why hasn't he been charged? Are there only Democrats in the FBI? Are there only liberals? I mean, I'm just asking.
Have you been here since 2016 when the FBI turned against the Trump administration and spread this Russia collusion narrative that, oh, just this week the national mainstream media came out and said, oh yeah, maybe those few bots on Facebook or Twitter really didn't do much for influence. I mean,
right. I mean,
top
they did.
levels of the FBI have been weaponized against they were weaponized against the Trump administration. They've been weaponized against conservative, against people who don't toe the line that the Biden White House wants. I think it's right there.
So there are Republicans though within the FBI, right? I mean, there are Trump supporters within the FBI. They're not all liberals and Democrats, right?
Well, it's a big organization. I'm sure there's people who agree with
Sure.
lots of things, but you don't just, as an FBI agent, you don't just get to go, I'm going to go investigate that.
Right.
Anything dealing with Hunter Biden
Understood.
is going to go to the highest levels of the FBI.
Understood, but I also would say that if somebody in an interview says that, yeah, Joe Biden was taking money illegally, I'm not going to necessarily believe that either, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that say a lot of things about Donald Trump that I'm sure you don't believe.
We started this conversation with you asking for one shred of evidence that Joe Biden was connected and why were conservatives so obsessed about Hunter Biden's laptop, and here I'm laying it out for you.
So somebody in an interview.
There's documentation on the laptop suggesting that Joe Biden was benefiting financially from Hunter Biden's business dealings involving China and Ukraine. That matters because Joe Biden's now the most powerful person in the world, right? And he works with Ukraine and China. And we should know if there is a financial tie there.
Understood. Where can I find information on what was on that laptop and who is giving out that information?
Well, the New York Post had a copy. months after the New York Post broke the story, the Washington Post, the New York Times came out and said
that Joe Biden broke the law.
No, they said that the laptops the contents on the laptop were actually from Hunter Biden. They weren't Russian disinformation, which the FBI was pushing to Twitter.
No, understood. I agree with you there. But what you just said about Joe Biden possibly breaking the law, where is that action? Because you said it was on the laptop. I want to know where that information is. Who's giving out that information? Is it credible information?
Well, look, I'm not up to speed on the nuances of the law.
But that's important, right?
Well, it's not just about breaking the law, though, right? It's about Biden's honesty. It's about what, if he took a lot of money from China, or if Hunter received a lot of money from China, and Joe Biden was getting a financial cut of that, is that of concern to the American people? I think it is.
Right, but you use the term if, and we need, again, I ask you, with all due respect, I ask you for evidence, and you say you don't have the nuances
I have offered the evidence on Hunter Biden's laptop.
And where is that coming from?
Hunter Biden's laptop.
According to who?
Well, according to the New York Post, the Washington Post, the New York Times.
No, I get that part of it, but the specific information of Joe Biden taking money from Hunter and possibly breaking the law, I want to know where is that information, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Right. There's an email on Hunter Biden's laptop that's talking about the payment breakdown for money that Hunter was going to receive, and there's 10% for the big guy in there. And in an interview before the election, Hunter Biden's former business partner came out and said, yeah, the big guy's Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, listen, if Joe Biden broke the law, then I want him, same thing as Donald Trump. I want him held to account. I just want to, again, I'm just an evidence guy, and I just want to see actual, real evidence. And if Joe Biden broke the law, then I'm all for it. Hold him to account. But when we talk about honesty, I hear a lot of conservatives talking about Joe Biden, he's dishonest, the crime family. Would you say the same thing about Donald Trump and the Trump family? Do you think Donald Trump is an honest person?
No.
You don't either?
No. No.
Why don't conservatives talk about that? Why don't they come out and say, you know what, Joe Biden's really dishonest, and I want him held to account, but look at all the stuff that Donald Trump has done. Why would they still support Donald Trump, and why is he still the main face of the Republican Party right now? He still is.
Well, it's a binary choice, right? You don't have in 2016. There's one of two people are going to be president: Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump.
I didn't vote for either.
All right, and guess what? One of those two people was president, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people looked and said, I have some personal qualms with Trump. I don't like some of the stuff he says. I don't like his rhetoric. But in terms of advancing policy, who is going to advance the things that I believe in? And that was Donald Trump for a lot of conservatives and Republicans. And I think rightly so. I mean, you look at things like the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court would look completely different if Donald Trump had not won re-election. Roe v. Wade would not have been overturned.
You think that's a good thing for the country, Roe v. Wade?
Incredible thing. I mean, on two issues. Obviously, just look at it from a constitutional perspective. The decision was garbage. I mean, they basically just invented this right to abortion. And even if you believe in abortion, that should be obvious, that there was no historical precedent. There's nothing in the document that says you have a right to kill your unborn child. They put it in there, and it's caused 50 years of conflict since. And then on the issue, I think it's absolutely the right decision to make, and it's led even now to the savings of tens of thousands of lives.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because this is an interesting topic. So you believe that abortion should be, if you had it your way, abortion should be illegal across the country, that no woman should be allowed to have an abortion?
Well, let's define the terms, right? Mm-hmm. I think if you are doing a medical procedure to save the life of the mother, like an endocopic pregnancy, I don't personally define that as abortion, because abortion is the intentional killing of another human being. But obviously in the debate that generally gets lumped in. So I don't think you should ban curing for the procedure to take care of an endocopic pregnancy.
Yep.
And then you look at things like rape and incest. And the reason the left focuses on this, right, is that or abortion supporters more generally, is it's a much easier ground to defend, because what you're trying to say is not what do you feel about the killing of an unborn baby, it's do you have sympathy for a victim of rape and incest? And obviously everyone has sympathy for the victims of those things. They're horrible, they're terrible, and they should be separated from it. And personally, if I had my way, yes, you do not bring justice to a rape by killing another human being. So you're not the rapist.
Got you.
But let me just say is that if someone wanted to say, I will make the trade, we will allow abortion in the case of rape and incest, and obviously the life of the mother, and we will get rid of it in the other 99.9 whatever percent of circumstances, that would be a trade I would live with. Got you.
Okay. So what do we do about if that was the case? There's, as you know, hundreds of thousands of kids right now that are waiting to be adopted. There are many Republicans out there that vote against maternity leave. They vote against every government program that would help, not you, but politicians that are Republican. They seem to vote against every program to help that baby after that baby is born. Maternity leave, whether it be welfare, whether it be food stamps. The list goes on and on of the way Republicans have voted over time. So they call themselves pro-life, but to me that's not pro-life. I think you need to be consistent and help mothers raise that child. If you're going to force that mother, which I don't agree with, to have that child, don't you need to have those programs put in place to help that mother?
So again, I think we're pulling ourselves away from the issue, which is when does life begin? If a mother has a 6-week-old baby, has all of those challenges that you said, there's no financial support, maybe the baby has a disability, should the mother be able to kill the baby?
Okay, so here's my opinion on that, and it's this is an important topic. My definition of when it is a human being is just different than yours, and I respect your opinion. For example, I would never tell you what to do, and I would never say, listen, if you want to, Victor, if you and your lovely, I don't know if you're married, if you and your lovely wife want to have 100 kids, do it, my man. I don't want to interfere with that decision. I do not believe, and this is a personal thing, I do not believe it is a human being unless it can survive outside the womb. That is my personal opinion. I don't remember being in my mother's womb. And again, I respect people that disagree with me on this. Obviously you do. And that's, I just think it's like religion. This is a personal decision, and it's a personal belief. I'll give you an example. There are some doctors that agree with you, with exactly what you're saying, because I would imagine you believe life begins at conception. There are also doctors out there that disagree with you, that bring in babies into this world every day, that would look at me in the eye, because I've talked to them, and they say, no, I don't believe life begins at conception. So to me, this is a personal thing, and there's no yes, no science to it, in my personal opinion.
Okay, so imagine I'm someone who personally believes that a 6-week-old is not capable of surviving outside the care of a mother.
Yep.
And society shouldn't put that burden on the mother. Is it okay to kill that child?
That should be the decision between the doctor and the mother, because it's not...
A 6-week-old baby? You should be allowed to kill a 6-week-old baby?
Well, first of all, I don't see it as killing a 6-week-old baby. That would be...
The baby has been born. The baby is outside the womb.
Oh, hold on. Okay, I misinterpreted what you said. I'm sorry. I thought you meant 6 weeks in the womb. My apologies. Okay, so you're talking about an emergency procedure.
No, I'm not talking about emergency procedure. I'm talking about a woman has had a baby.
Correct.
It's 6 weeks later. The baby is 6 weeks old.
I got you. Okay.
That baby will not survive without its mother's care. Constant care and attention. In some ways, even more onerous than when the woman was pregnant.
I misinterpreted your question. My apologies. I'm talking about the basics.
No, I'm asking.
Right.
Should the mother be allowed to kill that baby?
No.
Why not?
Absolutely not. Because we're talking about outside the womb where that baby can clearly breathe. When I say, be able to function on your own, I'm not talking about mother caring for that child. I'm talking about the basics of your heart beating outside the womb. I'm talking about breathing. I'm talking about basic things that a baby should be able to do that's healthy, which clearly in the womb you can't.
So
no, I do not believe
What's the biological difference between a baby who's been born and a baby who's still in a mother's womb? Why is one alive and one not?
First of all, I would start with brain function. I would start with the ability to breathe on your own, the ability to be able to do things outside the womb that you can't do in the womb. That's my personal opinion. And if you're talking about a 6-week, we're talking about a baby that would be what? Okay, well, 6 weeks old outside the womb.
Does a person in a coma, are they alive?
The person wasn't always in that coma, right? The person. So I don't think it's a fair comparison to talk about an adult that is in a coma that has zero brain function. And by the way, if you're talking about a vegetable, we have many laws in this country where the next of kin can make that decision for somebody who's maybe a vegetable or in a coma. It happens every day in this country. It's a very sad situation.
But is that person alive? Are they a human being? Because unborn babies, preborn babies have brain function. They feel pain.
Sure.
They react to music. They know the sound of their mother's voice. They have a brain. They are functioning much more so than someone in a coma. So you just told me that the reason that someone's alive and someone's not is brain function, and I'm just trying to.
The big difference is that that person or human being or whatever distinction you want to make is inside that woman's body. It is her body, and now I don't believe in late-term abortion. I believe there should be maybe a 3-month window. I don't agree with women that use abortion as birth control. I believe there has to be some level of responsibility, and it has to be done professionally. But here's something that I don't hear from Republicans at all. Victor, right now today, if you made abortion illegal, there'd be illegal abortions all over the country. It also wouldn't stop abortion. So I think you have to, in my personal opinion, come to the realistic view of if we ban abortions, it's going to make things worse for many women. They're going to die either by suicide or they're going to be performing illegal abortions or they're going to do it themselves. It's not going to stop abortion.
So let's just think about this argument. You said because it won't stop everything, we shouldn't make it illegal. Murder is illegal. It hasn't stopped murder. Now, I'm just trying to tease out your argument here.
Right.
Should we make murder legal because making it illegal hasn't stopped everything?
I think that's a terrible and ridiculous analogy with all due respect.
That was the argument you just made.
No, it wasn't. When we're talking about murder, that is against the law. Right now, having a legal abortion is not against the law in most places.
Right, and I said we should make it illegal, and you said, no, we can't do that because...
How can you compare a woman or, let's just say, a young teenager who wasn't raped at 16 years old, maybe makes a mistake, has unprotected sex, has a baby. That child is not ready to have that child. The parents have all decided they don't want that child out there in the world knowing that there's a child out there that's their daughter's child. They're not ready. They can't support it. Don't you think that should be a personal decision that the family should make? I mean, clearly you don't. But how could you compare that to somebody stabbing somebody and killing an adult? Like, I don't understand that analogy.
Well, it wasn't an analogy. It was trying to tease out your argument, right? I'm saying abortion should be illegal. You're saying abortion shouldn't be illegal because someone will still have illegal abortions, right? Even if it's illegal. And so
that's a part of the problem,
right?
Sure.
But your argument is saying because it's not going to end it entirely, we shouldn't make it illegal.
I'm just
trying to see if you're consistent in that argument.
That's one of many issues when I have abortion. The problem is a lot more women are going to die. Actual adults are going to die based on whether it be suicide or illegal abortions that are performed. It make things very, very dangerous. And again, my question is, if the argument is adoption, we have hundreds of thousands of kids out there that are still waiting to be adopted. Where are all these kids going to go?
Well, I mean, I got to say two things about this, right? First, the statistic is a little bit skewed because waiting to be adopted doesn't mean they haven't found a forever home, right? You can be in the system and you can be in your forever home, and they're just with the paperwork and the amount of time it takes to get it finalized, there's always going to be like a 6 to 9 month waiting period. So you're waiting to be adopted, but it doesn't mean you're not in a adoptive home. And regardless, I don't think the alternative to someone having a hard life is to kill that person. Imagine we've got a village in Asia or Africa or somewhere, and people are starving. It's a miserable life. They're hungry all the time. Should we just go in and kill them all? I mean, is that the humanitarian thing to do, or is it to say, no, you deserve a chance to live, and because you have a problem, I'm going to try and meet that need. But just because you have a hard time doesn't mean I have a license to kill you.
You deserve a chance to live, but we don't want to give you food stamps. We don't want to give you welfare.
See,
we don't want to give.
You're distracting here.
It's not a distraction.
No, stop. I'm happy to have the conversation about abortion, and I'm happy to have the conversation about if social programs are helpful or not. But what you can't say, unless you want to use my analogy and say, well, look, someone has a hard life, we should just be able to kill them. You're confusing what the real issue is, which is when does life begin? Because hopefully we can both agree that an innocent human life should not be taken, whatever the circumstances. And then we just have a question of, well, when does science say that life begins?
Right, and that's where we disagree. And there's a lot of people that disagree on that. Now, not everybody's going to agree on that. The reason
why. So then we can look at where does the science say that life begins? And it's very clear, life begins at conception. That is a unique individual from conception.
Okay, but again, there are brilliant, and again, I respect your opinion, but there are different, scientists, doctors, and brilliant scholars, some of whom would disagree with you on that. They don't believe life begins at conception.
Well, you're dodging, right? You and I are having a conversation. You're saying, well, these other people disagree with you.
Well, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I'm not dodging anything.
I just want to hear, a 6-week-old preborn baby. What is it? An elephant? Is it a giraffe? What is
very
the
different?
Baby?
That's a very different circumstance than if there's something in the womb. That to me that is a very different circumstance.
A preborn baby.
Yes.
A baby who's in the mother's womb.
Yep.
Well, if it's not a human life, what is it?
If it's not a human life, then what is it? That is something that will eventually be a human life if born. It is my personal opinion. Again, if it cannot survive outside the womb, I'm talking about the basics of breathing, what have you, then I don't treat that as a human being. That's just the way I think. That's the way I feel. And I get it too. I understand you're a religious man. There's a lot of people that feel the way you feel.
I haven't brought religion into this at all. I'm talking on a purely scientific basis. We know that life begins at conception. There is a unique preborn baby, and I'm just wondering, when does that preborn baby become human? And if you say it's when it's outside the womb, what's the biological difference between a baby who's, outside the womb and an hour before when the baby was inside?
Well, the basic difference is it's outside the womb, and it's breathing. The baby is breathing.
Your location determines whether you're.
It's outside that mother's body. It's not in that mother's body, and I believe a mother, for the most part, I don't agree with late-term abortion. But
why not? I mean, you just spent 5 minutes telling me it has to be outside the body. Why not?
Here's why I don't agree with late-term abortion. Because I believe it's a responsibility of the mother to be able to make that decision in a certain amount of time, and it shouldn't be a last-second decision. It's unfair. It's unfair to everybody involved, and I don't agree with it.
But why? I mean, you just told me that it's not a baby, it's not a human being, it's not a human life.
If it can't survive outside the womb, and in many late-term abortions, many doctors will tell you at that stage that if you want to call it baby can survive outside the womb. That is why I'm against late-term abortion. We're obviously not going to agree on this, but I think this is a fundamental difference. And again, I respect your opinion. I really do. I would never tell you how to think when it comes to this issue, or what your family should do, whether it be your sister or your whatever. You're entitled to your belief, and I don't want to interfere in that, quite frankly. But I feel like, and again, this is the fundamental difference that we have, I don't want to tell every woman, I don't know what it's like to be pregnant. You don't know what it's like to be pregnant. It's not my body. It's not your body. I don't want to tell every woman in this country that if you get pregnant, you got to be forced to have that child, because many people in this country believe that life begins at conception. That's just a fundamental difference that we have. That's all. I just disagree with it. That's all.
We disagree. I want to protect innocent human life, and in some circumstances, you're fine with an abortionist sticking the scissors into the skull of a baby and sucking out its brains with a vacuum.
Well, that is That's what it is. That is what it is. That is what. But it doesn't change my opinion of how I feel about abortion.
I just want to say is that you are okay with telling women how to act with their bodies when it comes to murder. Right?
No, I'm not. That's a ridiculous comparison. You are comparing a woman.
No, stop. You're saying you don't want to tell women how to behave with their bodies, right? You don't want to tell women how to behave. Well, we have laws that control how people behave all the time. If you drink a certain amount of alcohol, you aren't allowed to go drive on the road. You aren't allowed to take a gun and shoot someone else unless it's in something like self-defense.
You're comparing drunk driving to illegal abortion? I mean, with all due respect, that's absurd.
I'm taking your argument and I'm saying let's apply this principle that you've laid down in an
that's
argument.
Absurd. You're comparing.
I agree. Your position is absurd.
It's not, and that's where we disagree. I mean, you're saying my position is absurd because I think women should have a right to get a legal abortion. I wouldn't say your position is absurd. I think your analogy to somebody murdering somebody, my grandmother was killed from a drunk driver, to an abortion is stupid. With all due respect, that's a stupid comparison. I'm sorry, it just is. A drunk driver who kills somebody who is irresponsible and gets into a car and puts everybody's life at risk has nothing to do with a 16-year-old girl who has unprotected sex and the family decides to have an abortion. I know you see it as murder. I don't. You're calling every single woman in this country that has ever gotten an abortion a murderer. With all due respect, sir, I think that is ridiculous and that is absurd, but that is your opinion, okay? I understand you're a religious man, and the reason
no.
The reason why I bring that up.
Stop. Have I mentioned religion one time?
The reason why I bring up religion is because there are a lot of people, and I respect it, but there are a lot of people that are very religious that call themselves pro-life. Okay? Why is that? I believe it is their personal religion and faith, which I don't have a problem with. I'm not an atheist myself. But when you find people that are religious people, they are anti-abortion. And by the way, I don't like calling it pro-abortion either. I disagree with that assessment. It's a woman's right to choose. I'm not jumping up on a trampoline when a woman has an abortion and celebrating. It's a very
But why not?
I'll tell you why not. Because because something that you are, with all due respect, ignorant to is that personal decision that woman has to go through. I talked to many women that have had abortions. Very emotional. Very difficult decision.
Why? Why is it an emotional, difficult decision?
I think you can answer that question.
If it doesn't involve a human life.
I think you can answer that question.
I can, because I know it involves a human life. Mm-hmm. You're the one who tells me it doesn't involve a human life, despite all the scientific evidence that a new life begins at conception.
I didn't say it doesn't involve a human life. I never made that statement. You're misquoting me. What I did say is my definition of life at conception is different than yours. That's all I said. Eventually, will that probably be a human life if that woman decides to have that baby? Absolutely. Absolutely. I wouldn't deny that at all.
So someone's decision determines whether a person is human or not?
Somebody's decision determines whether something... I don't know what you mean by that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you just made the argument that, a preborn baby will become human if the mother decides to go through with
most likely, if the mother goes through with having that child, most likely, yes, of course. But I think, again, the distinction that I was trying to make was I'm not jumping up on a trampoline, and many people that are pro a woman's right to choose are not celebrating when a woman has an abortion. That is a different distinction. I'm not saying necessarily you're saying that, but a lot of people that call themselves pro-life are making that claim. And the reason why I bring up policy into this conversation is because when people say pro-life, they are against many policies that help people after they are born. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the George Carlin skit by now, but a lot of that rings true. Why are so many Republicans out there that call themselves pro-life against so many government programs that can help people raise that child? Why is that?
I just want to let's just move on to the welfare discussion.
Okay.
Okay. I just think it's a dodge to bring those two to
It's not. If you're pro-life,
we've kind of gone back and forth, right?
Okay, sure.
The reason I am against welfare broadly is I think it hurts people. We've had a war on poverty. We've spent hundreds of billions of dollars on it, and guess what? We're losing the war on poverty. So I think it's time to go back and say, boy, if we've been doing this for 6 decades and it hasn't worked, maybe we should do something else. And that's what I would.
What else should we do?
Well, encourage the formation of the family, right? One of the biggest things that welfare did is it took away the need for a breadwinner, right? You could get pregnant and the government would support you. All of a sudden, and you just see it. The breakdown of the family has happened, and you just look at the differences in, the broad differences. Obviously, every individual has choices and can overcome circumstances, but you look at the broad differences between a child raised in a 2-parent home and a child raised by a single parent, and they're stark. They're stark in terms of educational achievement. They're stark in terms of health outcomes. They're stark in terms of, basically the quality of their life going forward. And so I don't think you're going to fix, society more broadly until you fix the family.
So what do we do to all these families or mothers raising a child that have no money? They didn't have the opportunities that I would imagine you and I have. You have a very good job. You can argue that I have a good job. That's debatable. But we just go to them and say, hey, it's about the family. You know, just do a better job with your family. I'm sorry, Victor, but that's not going to solve the problem either.
Well, there's no solution that happens instantaneous, right? I mean, this is a problem that's been decades in the making. And so if you want to say there's not, like, you don't have an instant solution, correct. I do not have an instant solution.
Well, I think...
But can I finish my thought?
Sure.
But I can say that what we've been trying isn't working and we need to try something else. And so you look at something like the work requirements for welfare. Very successful. Drop the welfare rolls, and gradually they've been basically rolled back, where you don't have to be proving that you're working or getting an education to qualify for things like welfare.
Republicans don't want to raise minimum wage. I don't think minimum wage should be $15 an hour, but I think it should probably be more than $8 an hour. When you have companies that are making billions and billions and billions of dollars and they're paying their employees $7.50 an hour, I have a problem with that. I understand it's also a private business. I think there are a lot of things we can do to help people get out there in the workforce and do a better job of that. I agree with you.
So let me ask you something. Do you think most people, when they get a minimum wage job, stay at the minimum wage for their entire career?
Have you ever been on minimum wage before?
I have been close.
Okay, so I know a lot of people that are on minimum wage and they have multiple jobs.
Okay, well, the statistics, broadly speaking, something like 80% of people within the first year of being on a minimum wage job will get a raise to above the minimum wage. And so what the minimum wage is, or what jobs like that used to be called, are entry-level jobs, right? And the idea is you would enter, you would prove your skills to employers, you would improve your value that you could add to the company, and then you work your way up the ladder. And so, you know, if it's something where it's like, oh, you know, for 40 years, you're going to be working at $10 an hour. Yeah, I think that's a concern and that's a problem. But the problem is that if you say you can't work at $10 an hour and you only have $5 an hour worth of skills, well, in 2 years, you might have $15 an hour worth of skills. But if you can't get that first job, you never get a chance to improve. And so I think you have to look at it and say, well, the minimum wage should be higher. I mean, I'm sure you've gone around, you've seen, you know, Del Taco, $13 an hour to start. Nevada's minimum wage is, what is it, like $10.50 right now?
Yeah.
I mean, so the market will determine wages. And when the market is strong or where there's a labor shortage, wages are going to go up. Regardless of what the minimum wage do. The really destructive thing about the minimum wage is that if the market crashes and all of a sudden companies can only afford to pay someone $7 an hour, not because they're evil and rich and corporations, but because they'll be losing money and then they'll go out of business, then those people don't have jobs.
I'm not a big fan of telling companies, private businesses, how to pay their employees. I'm not a big fan of that. I think there also needs to be, again, we talked about immigration, middle ground. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders that $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm not comfortable with a 16-year-old working at McDonald's making $15 an hour. But I'm also not comfortable with a mother trying to raise a few kids making $8 an hour. And then, okay, she's working her way up. They just gave her $8.50, and then she's up to $9. I think we just need some middle ground there. That's all I'm saying as far as that goes. I don't agree with Democrats on a lot of different things, but these days when we talk about Republicans, and maybe we can get into more local issues here, you've talked about critical race theory. Let's get into that. And then we got to take a break. But we haven't taken a break yet, but it's good conversation, and I appreciate it. Critical race theory. You've talked about this a lot. Can you name me one teacher in the Clark County School District that is teaching critical race theory?
Like one specific teacher?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I've seen a lesson plan. You know, I apologize. I didn't know exactly what we're going to talk about, or I would have brought you this.
Well, you've written a lot of articles on critical race theory. The reason why I asked that is you're not the first person that hasn't been able to answer that question. I see a lot of people that talk about critical race theory. Guy Nora was in studio. In his ad, he says, I'm going to end critical race theory. And I said to him, can you name me one teacher that's teaching critical race theory? He said, no, I can't. Then why are you putting that in your ad? If this is such a huge issue, where is it happening? Listen, there are 3 million teachers in this country, right? We agree on that? There's a small percentage of those teachers that are idiots. I don't want them indoctrinating kids. Very small percentage. If they're doing that, I want them fired. Gone. But to label all teachers as they're indoctrinating our children, they're telling our kids to be gay and transgender, it's just not happening at the rate that I hear many Republicans talking about it. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, there's a lot there, right? You kind of zoom in and then you zoom out to something very broad. So maybe we can agree that critical race theory has no place in Nevada classrooms. And what critical race theory is, and maybe this is where we start the conversation, is just agreeing on the definition. Is what are the cause of disparities if you look at just racial groups? Is it solely race, right? Critical race theory posits that if every time you see a racial disparity, it's because of racism. And if you don't see a specific policy that's overtly racist, then you look more broadly at the system. And the system is inherently racist, and there's systemic racism baked into the system. And so anytime, critical race theory, anytime you have a racial disparity, that's the result of racism. And my view, and the view I think is correct, is anytime you have a disparity, there could be the result of racism. That's possible. Or it could be the result of other factors. You look at things like why are there anyway, I mean, so that's
I think that's very fair.
Broadly speaking, that's
I think that's
what the
very
terms of the debate
okay.
are.
I think that's very fair what you just said. We agree. We don't disagree on everything. It could be racism, but it could also not be racism. It could be very fair. But the point I go back to what I said earlier is, where is it happening? What teachers are doing it? And I just think it's nonsense. I don't think it's happening. It's not happening in the Clark County School District. Maybe there are a few college professors out there that are doing it, but the right wants you to think that our teachers are all indoctrinating our kids and they're teaching critical race theory. And Victor, I'm just saying it's not happening anywhere near the rate that some people say it is.
I'm sorry. I'm glad. Sorry, because I wasn't prepared, I have to kind of recall these things. So the Clark County School District has adopted an anti-racism policy. Okay. Right? That sounds very benign. Who could be against racism?
Right. Well, some people.
I mean, but broadly speaking, right?
Right.
The anti-racism policy basically defines that if there is a racial disparity in outcomes, that's the result of racism. That's the Clark County School District's official policy. A few years ago, Superintendent Jesus Shara lowered the standards for magnet schools. Okay. Why? Too many Asian students, not enough Black and Hispanic students. So those are two real-life examples, right, district-wide, where you can see critical race theory influencing the education of our children.
Well, that's a policy that the Clark County School District, I guess, implemented that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But that also doesn't mean that teachers are teaching critical race theory. That's what I was I don't agree with. Listen, you and I will agree on this issue. The Clark County School District is a joke. This school district here is awful. It's terrible. That doesn't necessarily mean that there are a lot of bad teachers out there. And I would ask you that question. Have you ever been in a classroom teaching kids in an inner city school before? I think it's a fair question to ask you because you do go after teachers.
So let me ask you something. Why is that a fair question?
Do you know, because you've gone after teachers in the past. Okay. And I'm asking you, a lot of Republicans have a problem with people going after police officers. By the way, I'm pro-police. And a lot of Republicans will say, well, you haven't been a police officer. You don't know what it's like to be a cop.
And I think that's a cop-out argument. The whole point of being in a democratic republic, right, is that we can have arguments and discussions. And
I'm not saying you can't.
Not every, right, but your questions imply that unless I've been a teacher, I'm not allowed to make these criticisms.
I asked you, I didn't say that. I asked you if you've ever been in a class and taught students. I didn't say you're not entitled to your opinion. I just wanted to give a little bit of background and see if maybe you've been a teacher before. I don't know. What I do know is I have teachers in my family. Doesn't mean that every teacher is good. I would never make that argument. But the overwhelming majority of them are wonderful at what they do. And I think when some people paint the picture that we have all these teachers that are indoctrinating our kids, telling them to be gay, there's a difference between telling somebody that you should be gay or you should be a transgender, as opposed to telling them it's okay to be gay and it's okay to be a transgender. I think that is a very definitive difference. And Republicans want to make the claim that all these teachers, could there be a few out there? Absolutely. I want them fired. No question. We agree. But to paint the picture that we have so many of these teachers that are indoctrinating our kids, it's just not true, Victor. That's all I'm saying.
Well, when you have the policy of the Clark County School District, the fifth largest school district in the country, saying that whenever you have a racial disparity, that's the result of racial discrimination. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, that's a major public policy issue. Now, do I have lesson plans for tens of thousands of teachers? I don't have lesson plans.
Right.
But it sounds like we agree. What's so funny here is it sounds like we agree that that has no place in schools, that that's the wrong attitude. And now it's just a matter of, well, how concerned should we be about it? Let's focus on this shouldn't be happening. And when it does happen, it's concerning.
Okay. I want to know where it's happening. I want to know what teachers are doing it. And if they're not doing it, I'm kind of sick of talking about it. That's just my personal opinion, because I don't think it's happening at the rate that so many people on Fox News say it is.
What rate do you think it's happening at?
I think it's very, very few. We got 3 million teachers out there. Are there a handful of teachers that are maybe a few hundred? I don't know. That are, and I'm guessing right now. But I want to know if there are claims made that there are teachers, not the school district, but teachers themselves that are indoctrinating kids. I want to have evidence of that.
Go look at Libs of TikTok. I mean, basically all the account does is just post videos of people in the education establishment and elsewhere, talking about doing the things that you say, aren't happening very much, and you oppose, And so I think it is happening. You can see lesson plans from places like Philadelphia, Seattle, or schools in California where they talk about critical race theory tenets.
I mean, you can go on TikTok and you can find teachers that are making pro-MAGA comments too, but you don't hear me every day talking about, boy, we got to get rid of these right-wing whack job teachers. Is it happening? Yes. Is it a talking point from the left? No. There are MAGA teachers out there too.
If it's not happening very much, why is there this big disagreement that it shouldn't be happening? Why does it become the official policy of the Clark County School District? Basically, critical race theory is the policy of the Clark County School District. Why do they change the standards for magnet schools? Because JARA is worried about the racial makeup of the magnet schools.
Okay, so I don't think you should be worried about the racial makeup of any school. Let people go to where they want to go. So we agree on that. And I disagree with that policy. What I am talking about are Republicans out there all over the place on TV saying that all these teachers are indoctrinating our kids and telling them to be gay. It's not happening. It's a joke. And I think it's just red herring. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's happening. But yet all these Republican candidates out there, I want to talk about local politics. I guess we're not going to have enough time to take a break today because I'm enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I think it's a good debate. But I appreciate you being here, Victor. So let's talk a little bit about January 6th, if you don't mind. Do you think Donald Trump was responsible and bears any responsibility for what took place on January 6th?
Well, there's two ways to define responsibility, right? I mean, is he broadly responsible in terms of pushing claims that were false about the election? And if he had not made those claims, would it have happened?
Right.
I think he bears responsibility in that sense. Does he bear responsibility in terms of, he plotted the coup, or he was texting people, or he incited the riot? I don't think the evidence is there for that. And I think it's actually, there's no evidence for that. And I think if you look at things like the time frame from when Trump made his speech, and even if you take the worst possible interpretation of that speech, which is just very standard political rhetoric. The people at that speech did not have time, physically did not have time to go from there into the Capitol before the attack on the Capitol started.
Don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't think Donald Trump planned the coup. But as you said earlier, which I also agree with, if he didn't say Joe Biden cheated and the Democrats stole the election, which obviously is a lie, which he still says today, then January 6th doesn't happen to begin with. You agree with that?
Yeah.
So why not hold him to it? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. He still lies about it today. January 6th doesn't happen if he's not lying. He's at the time the president of the United States, still lying about the election, attacking our democracy. They all do it here. Jim Marchant, thank God he didn't win. Adam Laxalt, I know it's somebody that you like. Adam Laxalt to this day has still yet to agree that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. I don't know how anybody.
That's not true.
Has he said it? He said that Joe Biden is our president, but Sam Peters, another one, fails to say that Joe Biden is a free and fair elected president.
Okay, look, if you want to talk about vulnerabilities in Nevada's system, I think there were lots of vulnerabilities. I'm happy to do that. I mean, that doesn't mean that Joe Biden didn't win. Nevada, at the end of the day, didn't matter what happened one way or the other. But I think the thing that's happened with January 6th, right, is you want to talk about, I think this is what's so funny is you talk about, we shouldn't blow up the critical race theory issue because it's just a few people. Well, there's a few hundred people at January 6th who do something horrible, and then all of a sudden that becomes, basically applied to the Republican Party at large.
So I would say that in a classroom, a teacher that might be teaching critical race theory is far different than somebody who goes into the Capitol, who wants to kill Mike
That's
Pence.
not what it's the scope, right?
But
we can both agree.
But these are two completely different. First of all, critical race theory, to me, it's not a crime. There's not something in the book that said you're going to go to jail. January 6th, we're talking about officers that were beaten.
It's the scope, right? It's the scope that's concerning. You know, you've got the few hundred people at the Capitol building who
700 people have been arrested.
700 people.
Yes.
You know, who did
people
the wrong
died
thing.
that day.
They were, well, I mean, let's not go too far down the rabbit hole, right? The only person who died that day was shot.
Not true. There was a woman that was trampled that day as well. That's not true. There was a woman that was trampled that day as well who died. Well, I mean, it's not funny, Victor. These people lost. I don't know why you're laughing. These people died. There's nothing funny about that.
It's the futility of the argument that I'm trying to raise. It's obviously just being glossed over. So let's go.
Okay. Well, finish your point. I just don't know why you bring up critical race theory and a teacher that may or may not be teaching something that you disagree with to an insurrection and people that are trying to overthrow our democracy. Like, I don't understand that analogy.
Okay. Well, the analogy is about how, you know, can you generalize to a large group of people from a small group of people, right? Like, you're very upset because there may be a few teachers out there teaching critical race theories, but it's not a broad problem, right? And so
I don't think so, no.
Okay, right. So you take that,
sure,
and then you go to January 6th. You've got a few people out of Donald Trump's 75 million supporters who do something very wrong, very bad, right?
Right.
And that has been generalized to that broader 75 million.
I haven't done that. I think the overwhelming majority of Trump supporters are not violent. I don't agree with them. I've never made that claim. In fact, I'll even go a step further. Mark Levin, who I think is a despicable human being. He's done my show before. Despicable. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. When he talks about Black Lives Matter, all he does, tens of millions of people, right, were protesting across the country. That's a fact. Of those people, there was a small percentage of people that did terrible things. They lit buildings on fire. They looted. Horrible. No reasonable person would agree with that. But he takes the entire scope of Black Lives Matter. They're all Marxists. They're all criminals. They're all terrible. But when talking about January 6th, he'll never say that about January 6th. And you know what? I agree with him. There were 100,000 people there that day. The overwhelming majority of those people, even though I might disagree with their politics, they're not criminals. There were 700 people that did that. But when you ask Republicans about Black Lives Matter, they'll take the entire scope as a bunch of thugs. But when we talk about January 6th, I'm not going to say all those people were white supremacists. Some of them were. A small percentage of those people did something horrible. Why is it Republicans want to paint the broad stroke that Black Lives Matter, they're all criminals, but then when it comes to January 6th, oh no, very small percentage, which, by the way, I agree with. It was a small percentage, just like Black Lives Matter.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we have some agreement.
Do you agree with me on that at least?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about Black Lives Matter, the organization, I mean, I think they've got some things there that are...
Not talking about the organization. I agree with you.
Yep.
We agree again. You see, Victor, we're getting somewhere. I'm talking about the movement. Tens of millions. Are there 8 or 9 people within the organization that are scumbags? Absolutely. They took advantage of it. No question. I was one of those people that went to those. I didn't loot. I didn't commit crime. I was here in Las Vegas. You know, I went to a few. I think you can be pro-police and pro-Black Lives Matter. I'm both. I see police officers. I shake their hand. Thank you, sir, for what you do, because the overwhelming majority of cops are good people and they're heroes. I think we would agree on that.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about Black Lives Matter, right? Is that it's a term and it's got several different meanings, and that's what makes sometimes the conversation so hard. Is, you know, if you want to take it in the literal sense, do Black Lives Matter? Of course, absolutely. I think some people took it in the sense of, you know, we're against police brutality.
Sure.
You know,
I think it's all the above there.
But then there's also a segment that says, you know, very critical race theory wants to attack the nuclear family, and so that, you know, that kind of the meaning kind of gets shuffled depending.
I think the people out there that took it as critical race theory that want to attack the family.
The organization itself. I mean, the official Black Lives Matter organization, right?
Yes.
They said they want to disrupt the nuclear family.
Okay, so those are 8 or 9 idiots, and well, they are.
They're running the organization.
Right, and they're idiots. But those are 8 or 9 people, and I think if you ask most reasonable people that went to Black Lives Matter protests, they would tell you, I'm here because I'm for equality. I don't know who runs the Black Lives Matter movement. I haven't donated any money to those idiots. I wouldn't do that. But I work with the local NAACP because I know they're doing good work and they're good people. I wouldn't give money to some of those people that are running the organization, Black Lives Matter. I agree with you, scumbags. But I always like to talk about the good and the tens of millions of people that were mostly nonviolent protests during the day. Yes, at night, some horrible things happened, no question. And you know what? A lot of those bastards and those agitators, I want them to be in jail, highest extent of the law, just like I want those insurrectionists to be put in jail, the highest extent of the law. I just don't know why. Maybe we can have this conversation, but so many people, literally, it's like black and white, right? All these Black Lives Matter people, they're all thugs, they're all bad people, and defend, what took place on January 6th. It was a tourist visit. Why can't we go after both and be fair about it?
I think that's fine. I mean, I think, if you want to just the question more broadly, right? I mean, what do you do in politics? You try and attach your opponent to an untenable position.
Yep.
So it makes a lot of these false dichotomies, right? Where
right.
You either agree with me or you're terrible person A, or you disagree with me and you're terrible person B.
And I don't agree with that as well. And I'm with you. And these are the types of conversations that more people need to have, in my personal opinion. Boy, I'm going to open up a can of worms here. I don't know if you have a few more minutes. I got to bring up Steve Sisolak. I know You've had plenty of criticisms of him, and I want to talk to you about that, and maybe we'll get to Joe Lombardo too. What are your biggest criticisms of Steve Sisolak in his tenure here?
Well, I mean, you have to kind of divide it between pandemic and non-pandemic, right? I mean, I think I think you could justify the restrictions very early. I think there's a lot of unknowns, and so even though it was a mistake, I think you can say, look, he's doing his best.
The shutdown was a mistake. Is that what you're saying?
The shutdown, right? We're all learning. It's all confusion. Okay, I grant that.
You don't think anything should have been shut down?
Well, I mean, if we just knew what we do now, no, I don't think there should have been any shuts down. But in terms of the mistake, it was holding on to power, right? He shut the churches down, and then he just held on to the power. The masks were obviously not effective. Still had the mask mandate, and so
you said masks were not effective at all. They didn't work at all.
Yeah, they did not work. I mean, the N95s. Well, the studies show, just the practical data shows it. If you look at when the mask mandates went on, and then the cases surged, and then they didn't surge, and they surged, and they didn't surge. They didn't work.
Why do surgeons wear masks then?
Well, it's the splash, right? They don't want blood getting on their
faces. Or spreading disease, or
they aren't designed to stop airborne transmission.
So you don't think masks work at all under any circumstance, even N95s?
No, I didn't say. I specifically said N95s do.
They work, right? But the other masks don't work.
Yeah, they aren't
as well. I agree with that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting conversation.
I think we see it over 2.5 years that if masks worked, there would have been a place where there were lots of people wearing masks.
You're entitled to that opinion. Let me ask you another question, Victor. When we were at the time in the heart of the pandemic, when we were losing over 4,000 people a day, would you have had any mitigating factors during that time in the state?
Well, the question is, when you say mitigating factors, you're kind of saying the question of did you want people to die or not? Well, no.
No, that's not what I'm asking you.
I'm just setting the context, right?
Sure.
Obviously, I don't want anyone to die.
I know that.
And so what you have to say is, did those things end up being effective? What were the long-term consequences?
I understand, but I'm not asking you.
Can I finish answering the question?
I know, but that wasn't my question, though. My question was, what would you have done to help not spread the virus? Not what didn't work. I get it. You don't agree with a lot of the shutdowns. I understand your thoughts on it. My question is, again, when we were losing 4,000 people a day in this country, would you have done anything? That's my question. What would you have done? If you're going to criticize Steve Sisolak, I respect your opinion. I'm glad to hear you out on that. And you don't agree with what he did do, which may or may not have worked. We can talk about that. What would you have done?
I would have educated people about where the risk was and who was at risk. I think that was the most important thing. And then you let people make the decisions that they want to.
So just honor system. Guy could be walking around with COVID.
Honor system. I mean, you are responsible for yourself, right?
But this affects others too. You know that.
Yeah, but I mean, we just had 2 years or a year of lockdowns, right? And the disease went crazy. And the best thing to have done would have been to reopen, encourage elderly people who are obese, people who have health conditions, to stay as isolated as possible, and then have young people go out and get infected because their mortality rates were extremely low, build up herd immunity.
So I'm just trying to understand. I understand your criticisms of Sisolak. By the way, I have criticisms of my own, and I've challenged him on that. I didn't like it the second time he closed down bars, but he allowed casinos to be open. I thought that was a mistake. You have to be consistent. I had criticisms of Sisolak. I didn't even vote for Sisolak, by the way. I'm an independent, even though in this conversation I probably sound like a lefty. But I want to get this right, though, because I'm surprised. You're telling me that, again, when we were losing 4,000 or 5,000 people a day, the only thing you would have done as governor is just tell people, yeah, this is a risk factor. Do whatever you want. I wouldn't do this if I were you, but do whatever you want.
Well, I mean, you make testing available, right? The best that you can. Obviously, it's helpful for people to know, but in terms of what would I have mandated, no, I think the mandates were a mistake, and I think you obviously can't go back and say what would it have been, but the promise of 15 days to slow the spread didn't happen, right? All the stuff that we were promised was just hold on a little bit longer, shut everything down.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you. We weren't promised everything. Donald Trump said 15 cases down to 0. He said it would be gone by Easter. I don't hear a lot of Republicans.
One of the worst mistakes of his presidency.
We agree on that.
How he handled COVID.
I tend to agree with you on that. See, we're reaching some common ground here. That is my biggest criticism of Trump. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? I despise the man, but I never usually bring up too much policy. I just think he's an awful human being. When he took the coronavirus press conferences and turned them into, in a sense, campaign rallies, talking about how much the Democrats are terrible and Joe Biden, injecting yourself with disinfectant. So I agree with you. I think his handling of COVID and his rhetoric was not very good. If he just shut up and he stayed off of Twitter, I think he would still be our president. I really do.
I agree. I think Twitter was just a disaster.
Yeah. Here's what I say about Biden, and then maybe we can go back to Sisolak. We only got about 10 minutes left here. I believe Biden was not my first, second, or third choice. My vote was an anti-Donald Trump vote. But I don't believe he's a bad man. I think he's a man of empathy, a decent man, and that is what I do admire about him. When he talks about his son, Beau, who was a hero who died, to me that is his strongest point when he talks with families that are grieving. I don't believe Donald Trump has an ounce of empathy in his body. I mean, I have a friend. He went to the hospital here after October 1. Quick photo op, he's gone. He was here for an hour. That's just not Joe Biden. That's what I appreciate about Joe Biden. Now, if you're going to talk about policy, yeah, different conversation. I just think Donald Trump, the human being, is just despicable. And when I hear people that are very religious people that still support Donald Trump, and then they say, well, I just like his policies. I say, when does it end for you? The 25 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape. John McCain, I don't respect him because he was captured. These Mexicans, crossing the border, I suppose some of them are good people, but they're rapists, they're bad people. In Playboy magazine saying, I don't want black people counting my money in my casinos. I want Jewish people counting my money. These are just awful, awful statements from, in my opinion, an awful man. And I wonder how a religious person can support Donald Trump when, to me, he's the biggest sinner of them all.
Well, I mean, it's a policy focus, right? I mean, as I said before, there were two choices in 2016. There was Hillary Clinton and there was Donald Trump. And there was a Supreme Court seat at stake. And Trump obviously won. Roe v. Wade is overturned. Tens of thousands of children are alive today because of that decision, because of the judicial people he appointed. So
some people say policy over a despicable human being. We all vote differently. I just don't vote that way. I'd rather vote for somebody. Liz Cheney, I disagree with everything she stands for as much policy-wise. Disagree with everything. But I would still vote for her over somebody like Donald Trump because I have respect for her, because she did the right thing and she chose not her party first. She chose right over wrong. But again, people vote differently. That's just how I vote. I vote on person first. Barack Obama, not the greatest president in the world. Pretty smart guy, good speaker, good father, good husband. That stuff's important to me. John McCain. It's why I didn't vote for Obama or John McCain, because I would have been okay with either of them being president. Same thing with Mitt Romney. Don't always agree with Mitt Romney. I think he's a decent man. John McCain, more hero, decent man. This is my opinion. I think we need more decent people in Washington. I don't like Ilhan Omar. I don't think she's a very nice person. I don't like Chuck Schumer. I don't like Nancy Pelosi, right? I want younger people in office. I don't want Joe Biden to run again. I really don't. But let's be honest, 99% of talk radio is conservative talk radio. You never hear the other side. I used to watch Hannity and Combs all the time.
You just turn on any mainstream media outlet and you will hear the other side.
What radio station is a left-wing talk show or a Democrat? Can you name me one left-wing talk show host?
I mean, look at the overall media environment, right?
I was talking about radio. You're right. There's left-wing media, no question. But talk radio is all conservative. I don't understand it. I used to watch Hannity and Combs all the time. Great show. I used to watch Tucker Carlson when he was on CNN Crossfire. Great show. We don't see that anymore. So what do I do? And I'm just going to ask you the same question. I'll watch a segment on Fox News talking about some of the issues we're talking about. Then I'll go on CNN. Then I'll make my own decision. But I think we're missing that. Do you agree with me? We need both sides, and then make your own decision.
Well, I mean, I think, I think the biggest is too strong of a term. One of the problems facing the country, right, is that you have people who want things that are incompatible. Mm-hmm. You have 65-70% support for big government spending and 65-70% support for low taxes, right? Like those are mutually exclusive, which we're just kind of papering over with the debt exploding. Yeah. So I think we can both agree that we want people who think through the issues, think through the trade-offs of issues. That you can have something good and support the policy, but it will come at some sort of cost, and that's okay because we understand that there are trade-offs in life. Mm-hmm. And the public needs to grapple with that, the public more broadly. And I think that would be a very healthy place for the country to get to.
Okay, loaded question here. We're almost out of time. You're a staunch conservative. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. I struggle with trying to understand what Republicans stand for in 2023. If you ask me what Democrats stand for, I think I have a pretty good idea, not because I'm a Democrat. Equality, LGBTQ rights, tax the rich, help the poor, even though you might disagree with their policies on how they get there. For the most part, Democrats have stood by those, as some would call, values. I could have answered the question of what Republicans stood for 10 years ago. I have no idea what they stand for now. Help me understand.
Well, what did you think they stood for 10 years ago?
Well, let me start with decency. Let me start with decency, because I don't think we see a lot of Republicans in Washington right now with decency. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Kevin McCarthy, who has absolutely no backbone, Matt Gaetz, Gymnasium Jordan. These are despicable people, in my opinion, with no backbone, and all they care about is being in power. Yes, there are Democrats that think that way as well. But when I think of the faces of the party,
I mean, are you talking about policy issues? I mean,
well, if we're going to talk about policy issues, you're certainly not giving tax breaks to the middle class and the poor. It seems like giving tax breaks to the rich and the Fortune 500 companies.
I mean, I guess. Okay. I guess I'll just answer the question so we don't get into more of a dispute. I mean, I think you would say securing the border would be one.
Okay.
I think education reform, obviously on the local level.
Okay.
That looks like school choice. The federal government's a little bit more limited in what they can do. I think you would look at things like pro-life policies, protecting the unborn is something that's very important to Republicans. I think you would say rolling back the size and scope of government is something that's broadly very important to Republicans.
How do you roll back government involvement when you want to ban abortion? I don't understand that. Isn't that hypocritical? We don't want government involved. My body, my choice when it comes to the vaccines, but it's not my body, my choice when it comes to abortions.
Because there's a second body involved, right? The body of the unborn.
That's where the opinion comes in.
So okay, I just if you really want to understand, right? You're kind of taking this thing and you're trying to create the false dichotomy, right? Because you want a law. If you want this law, you can't support less laws in other areas. Republicans, the choice is not between lots of government and no government. It's between where is the proper functioning of the government. And I think one of the proper roles of government is to protect people's life. In fact, probably the most fundamental job the government has is to protect the life of human beings. And so in that respect, ending abortion, protecting the life of a human being is a fundamental job of government.
What would you say with the polls out there, even by Fox News, that over 6.5 out of 10 Americans, Republican and Democrat, believe in the woman's right to choose?
Well, you look at it, and where the support really comes down is abortion through the first 3 months. Right. There's broad support for that.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to what we talked about is, do people think through the issue fully, right? The position of abortion on demand makes, to me, coherent sense, even if I disagree with it, right? The position of life begins at conception makes coherent sense,
right?
And the American people are kind of like, well, we kind of have sympathy for this, but we know it's kind of a baby, and so we're going to allow the killing of it before it really looks like a baby, and that's kind of.
But I agree with you. Yeah, sure. Republicans, for the most part, especially running for office today, they run on the abortion issue. I don't know if that's good for them, but they do that. They do talk about the border. You're absolutely right about that as well. When I think of Republicans, and you tell me if you disagree, the issue of we don't want gay people getting married. We want to treat gay people different than straight people. We don't want to treat them the same. When I think of, not all, because there are plenty of Republicans out there that are for gay marriage, which I appreciate. Even though I am not gay, not that there's anything wrong with being gay, Why do so? I don't know. Are you for gay marriage? Are you against gay marriage? What are your thoughts on that?
I think gay marriage has been a mistake. I mean, you look at 60 years of the attack on the family, the no-fault divorce laws, just the societal acceptance of, it's okay. Acceptance on one hand has been okay because obviously people have freedom and they should be able to make their own choices. But in terms of a societal recognition that there's something important about a child being raised by a father and a mother, and it goes back to the improved outcomes for those children. And so I think there is a societal stake.
Improved outcomes for that child. There are studies that saying that 2 men or 2 women can't raise a child as good as a straight parent.
As a child in a 2-parent biological family,
yeah.
that is the best situation for a child to be when it comes to educational achievement and just basically the whole.
You know what I'm going to ask you now? Things. Where is the evidence that proves that 2 men raising a child or 2 women raising a child is not as good for that child as a man and a woman? Where is the evidence that would support that claim?
The Institute for Family Studies has a number of studies looking at it. Again, I apologize. I asked you maybe I asked you what topics, but I don't have everything.
Well, these are things we talk about. So I would love to see that study because I know there was a woman in this town that used to do a right-wing talk show named Heidi Harris who went on the air and said along the lines of what you said, only in a much stronger language. I think you're saying it in a very respectable way, even though I might disagree with you. And she basically claimed that 2 gay men or 2 gay women cannot raise a child as well as straight. And she lost her job for it. Now, I am not for cancel culture. I think people should be able to share their opinions. But I think it is very, very disrespectful for people in general to say that if you're gay, it's proven you can't raise a child and you can't have a great family as well as a straight mom and dad.
Well, again, what you look at is there a societal interest in an intact nuclear family? And there is a societal interest in an intact nuclear family because that's okay. Well, obviously, I'm making the case, right?
Sure.
Because that's the union that can produce children.
Question: why not just let people live their lives then? You don't want to be gay, and I don't believe gay is a choice, but that's opening up another can of worms. But why not just let people be who they are? And I've seen plenty of gay parents that do a wonderful job raising a child. I've seen great parents that are straight. You can make the argument maybe they didn't do a good job with me, but that's another story for another show. But you get what I'm saying.
That's fine. No one's saying it should be illegal. I mean, if you want to know, is there a societal interest in traditional marriage? That's what I think the society.
You think gay being a sin? It's a sin to be gay.
As a public policy or as
no, your personal beliefs. Do you think it's a sin?
I think all sex outside of a heterosexual marriage is sin.
Okay. And again, I respect your personal beliefs, even though I disagree with you.
And again, I want to point out though, I didn't bring that to the discussion.
And
because I think that's important, right?
And I do.
Same with abortion.
Yes, I agree.
Same with what's the point of
100%.
Why is marriage a foundational issue?
I agree. So separation of church and state.
Okay, well, that's a whole other discussion.
Well,
obviously we're going to disagree.
But the sentiment, I agree with you. I don't think you should ever, religion is, I think you'll agree with me, very personal, right? We all have different beliefs. I would never take those beliefs away from you and your religion. Yes, during the heart of the pandemic, I don't think 1,000 people should have been jammed into a church. That's another maybe conversation we could have for another day. But those are your beliefs, and I would never want anybody to take those away from you. There are just people that believe differently about gay marriage and think that people should be allowed to be married anywhere, if they're gay. And obviously some people disagree with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some people disagree with that. I want to give you the opportunity. And by the way, I really do appreciate you coming on. I'm a little different than Kevin Wall. I challenge people. Kevin's a really nice guy, by the way, and I've heard you on his show, and you do a great job. And there are just, and I'll say this in closing, I challenge everybody. I had Dina Titus sitting in your seat. I challenged her. I challenged Steve Sisolak. Yes, these days I challenge Republicans a little bit more because I tend to disagree on a lot of the stuff that's going on today. But that's just what I do. So don't take it personal. I don't think you did. I challenge people, especially if I disagree with them. Listen, I had Horsford in studio not that long ago when the elections were going on, and he basically threatened Sam Peters right here, and that was wrong. And I called that out. I'm not a fan of Sam Peters either. But I want to give you an opportunity. I'm talking a lot again. I want to give you an opportunity to give out your social media. You are a good follow on Twitter, by the way. I follow you. And one thing I definitely appreciate about you is you're opinionated. And I like anybody who's opinionated, and I also respect anybody that is willing to come in here and have a debate with me, which clearly you did, and I do appreciate you for doing that. And I think more people need to have these types of conversations. Give out that social media, my man.
Well, I think debate is healthy. I am on Twitter, Victor. My last name
Yeah.
is Impossible, Joe.
Yeah.
C is in cat, K is in kite, S is in Sam.
Jakes.
Jakes. Yeah. It is impossible.
Be honest, this hasn't been too torturous for you, has it?
I enjoy debate. I mean, I'm the kid who listened to talk radio growing up, right? So it's,
what did you listen to growing
fun.
up, by the way? We got about a minute.
Rush Limbaugh, obviously. I thought he was just as an entertainer, just brilliant.
He certainly is a pioneer. There's no question about that.
My favorite host was Michael Medved. I was up in the Northwest.
I know Michael. I used to work for. I didn't know that. I used to work at Cairo for a little bit.
Yeah.
I know Michael. Michael's a great guy.
I listened to KVI. Kirby Wilbur in the morning. John Carlson.
You know Ron and Don. You remember Ron and Don?
I don't remember Ron and Don.
Okay, I used to be on that show. I was out there in Seattle for a little bit.
Okay.
I like it out here like you. I like the weather out there is brutal, man. Do you go to any sports games, by the way?
It's nice to have it be sunny.
You go to the Raiders games? You go to any of the games in town?
Like my kids basically keep me engaged.
How many kids you
have? 7.
You have 7 kids?
7 kids.
And he had time to debate this idiot for 90 minutes on pushing the limits. Can you believe that? Well, no, in all seriousness, like I said, Victor, I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you coming on. And, these types of, in a respectful way, we got heated, but in a respectful way. These types of conversations need to be had. Unfortunately, when I had Joey Gilbert on the show, it wasn't always so respectful, but he still texts me from time to time. He likes the abuse. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, my man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
For the record, I've never done an hour-and-a-half segment before in my life. That's very unprofessional of me. That was an hour-and-a-half segment, but it was so good. I couldn't go to break. Victor, thank you so much. Appreciate you, my man. Really appreciate that conversation. All right, folks, that's a wrap. That's the show. We'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. I hope everybody has a phenomenal Wednesday afternoon. I'm heading to UNLV basketball. They're playing Boise State tonight. Going to make a quick trip out with my friends in Pahrump real quick. And then, no, not what you think. We're not going to the Bunny Ranch. Stop thinking that. Golden Nugget. We're going to the Golden Nugget. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great day. Okay.
I'm not here to get into trolling or hate.
No, I'm not. I'm not here to do that. I appreciate you calling in. All right. So tell me.
Sure.
So tell me what. Where do I start here? Why are you supporting Donald Trump? I guess let's start there.
Well, this should be my first time voting for him.
Okay.
In the past, however, 12 years, however, since 2016.
Okay.
I have voted in the past, but for me, he has the policies that make sense.
Which policies?
Honestly.
Like, give me some specifics. What specific policies that you like?
Economically, we're not in a good spot economically. I feel that in my day-to-day life.
Okay, so that's your opinion on that, but specifically, like economically isn't a policy. So, like, what specific policies that Trump implemented you disagree with the Democrats on, and you could say, man, I really like that policy. That really helped the economy, because he did put us $8.4 trillion in debt, and he left an economy that was terrible compared to the economy that he took over from Barack Obama. So I just want to know, like, what did he do in 4 years? Because you said you like his policies, and I just want to know, like, what policies do you like? Right? That's a fair question.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Economically, you bring up the debt.
Sure.
I think the debt has been something to play with for these people. Tough to blame on just presidents, but, the debt's out of control, obviously. Everybody says they'll get it under control, but who knows? But, and we had COVID.
Right.
We had to spend our way out of COVID.
You think he did a good job handling
Donald Trump?
You think he did a good job handling COVID?
Job.
So when he said 15 cases,
so
when he said 15 cases down to 0, it's going to be gone by Easter. He talked about disinfectant, and he turned his coronavirus press conferences into campaign rallies. Would you define that as a good job?
I wouldn't define that as defining the government's program of COVID at the time.
Okay, well, we were losing when he left. We were losing 3,000 to 5,000 people a day, and per capita, we were one of the worst countries in the world. Not the worst, but one of the worst countries in the world. And when we have more money than just about any other country in the world, I don't know. I guess I just respectfully disagree with you. I don't think that's good, but that's okay. We can disagree on that. Can you name me a policy that you like?
Just in general?
Well, yeah, because you said you like his policies, not a policy. And I just want to be fair with you. What is it?
In all honesty, I like the idea of America first. I like the idea of a strong America.
But that's not a policy. America first is a slogan. I didn't, with all due respect, I didn't ask you what slogans you like, because slogans mean nothing to me. Anybody can do that. You said you liked his policies. I can give you a bunch of Biden policies that worked. The CHIPS and Science Act, capping insulin at $35, for example, helping to raise minimum wage, maternity leave, for example. I can give you a long laundry list of policies that worked. I'm just asking you for one, sir, and you haven't given me one policy.
Yeah. Okay, funding black colleges is pretty nice.
Funding black colleges. So what policy was that?
I'm not a policy guy. I'm not a political guy.
Fair enough. I understand, but that's fine.
But am I wrong? Did he fund black colleges?
I don't know.
Compared to the past?
You're asking me. All I'm saying is you say you're not a policy guy, but yet you say the reason why you're voting for Trump is because you like his policies. With all due respect, sir, it's hard to have a conversation if you're going to say that. Okay, so you can't name me one policy. Okay, we'll move on from that.
I just did.
Well, that's not what's the policy? What's the bill? You can't even
I don't know the name of it, man.
Okay.
I don't know.
So he just threw money at black colleges, but you don't know the policy.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. All right. I don't know what policy you're talking about, but we can move on from that. No problem. Does it bother you that he's a 34-count felon? Does it bother you that he's a liable sexual abuser? Does it bother you that he calls our brave men and women suckers and losers? Does it bother you what happened on January 6th? Does it bother you that he still hasn't conceded the 2020 election? Does any of that behavior, forget about whether you think it's criminal or not, does any of that behavior bother you at all?
To an extent, sure.
Okay, well, I appreciate
not a large enough extent not to vote for him.
So
to an extent, yeah.
So policies, even though you couldn't name any, with all due respect, policies are more important to you than principle, morals. Is that a fair assessment, or am I don't want to mischaracterize your take.
In the choices that were given, legitimate choices of people to vote for.
Okay, why is
I'm going to go with policy.
Okay, but you didn't name any policies, but that's okay. We've been there before. Can you tell me why Kamala, you don't think she's legitimate? What's wrong with her?
I didn't say she wasn't legitimate.
Okay, I'm mischaracterizing it then, but I want to hear I guess I want to hear. We've talked about Trump, sort of. I want to get your what do you not like about Kamala Harris? Is that a fair question? What do you not like about her?
It all seems fake. The joy thing. She's flip-flopped on a lot of different issues. She seems like a nice lady.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what they want her to win on. And I'm not against a woman president by any means.
Okay.
But from the things she said in the past to now, it doesn't smell right. And I know exactly what you're going to say.
Well, it's hard
Trump
for me.
It's the same thing.
No, I wasn't going to bring up Trump. Trump. I just wish you'd be. So it bothers you. Her laugh, her fake joy, her laugh bothers you. But the fact that Donald Trump is a liable sexual abuser, that's not that big of a deal to you. Let's just talk about policy. Do you see where I'm going with that? January 6th, lying about the election, a liable sexual abuser, 34-count felon.
How much sex trafficking has gone up since Biden's been president?
Actually, I'll answer that.
To do against that.
So my question was about Harris, but I will answer that question. Do you know, sir?
Well, you brought up liable sexual abuse.
Sure.
That's why I bring it up.
Is Joe Biden a liable sexual abuser? Is Kamala Harris a liable?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Where was that proven in a court of law? Okay, where was that proven in a court of law?
In a court of law?
Yeah. Oh, so you laugh about the courts.
No,
so you're laughing about the courts. So we could just call somebody a sexual abuser, and that means that person's a sexual abuser, and it doesn't have to be proven in a court of law, and you're laughing at that? Donald Trump was proven liable in a court of law with a jury of his peers that he sexually abused a woman by the name of Jean Carroll. He has 25 plus women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, including his ex-wife in a court deposition. But you're making a claim that is totally unsubstantiated that Joe Biden is a sexual abuser. Where are you getting that from?
Well, I'd say the Jean Carroll thing's a joke.
Okay, so you think our courts are a joke. Okay, so what about the other 25 women? Are they lying too?
I don't know who's lying about Joe Biden, right?
Well, where has it been substantiated?
Law.
Yeah, where has it been substantiated that Joe Biden is a sexual abuser? Well, what can you tell me about that? Because maybe this is breaking news. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, have you checked out Ashley Biden's diary, or is that?
Yes, I have. Let's talk about Ashley Biden's diary. First of all, yeah, let's do it. First of all, Ashley Biden was the first person at the DNC that introduced her father, number one. Number two, she stands by her father. Number three, that diary was in the hands of 3 or 4 right-wing nutcases that stole the diary, including a guy by the name of Mr. O'Keefe. It has never been proven or substantiated that she even wrote that in the diary. But I'm sure you weren't aware of that. But you would rather look at and take something that his daughter wrote in a diary. By the way, even in the diary, even if it was real, which we don't know if it was, she said borderline maybe inappropriate, okay? You have a woman in a court of law that said that Donald Trump raped her. It was proven based on evidence in a court of law that Donald Trump raped her. So you want to laugh?
Well, how much did she win? How much did she win in that settlement?
Here's my question. I don't care about the money. Okay. Here's the problem that I have
here.
She said
it was sexy. She said it was sexy.
So does that mean that
live television?
So does that mean that it didn't happen?
I'm saying this woman maybe isn't the parameter of what you should be listening to.
So you don't think this woman?
New York socialites, they're free.
Okay, you don't think that's a parameter, Jean Carroll, even though a jury decided he's a liable sexual abuser, a man who has 5 kids with 3 different women, a man who's had 25 women have accused him of sexual assault or rape, but you want to go by and call Joe Biden a sexual abuser because a diary that was completely unverified, never proven in a court of law, that was in the hands of Mr. O'Keefe and other right-wing turds that stole the diary. Do you see where I'm going with this, sir? It's an issue of credibility. This is the man who bragged about sexual assault, who said, if she wasn't my daughter, I would date her. By the way, how can you explain the fact that he was on the Jeffrey Epstein flight log 7 times, mingling and hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? Or does that not bother you at all either?
I mean, it's a cause for concern, but listen, these people of this ultra wealthy status, which I'm against. That's probably one of my biggest knocks on Donald Trump. They catch rides all the time because they're jet setters. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean anything went down.
But you know who wasn't on? You know who wasn't on that? You know who wasn't on that flight log? Joe Biden.
I guess Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
Yeah, they weren't on that flight log.
Joe Biden owns an island right by a little St. James, not far off. I mean,
so because
you've never heard that, but he does. And he mingles with all these people. It's the same.
Okay, can you show me?
Pool.
All right, fair enough. Can you show me one picture of Joe Biden mingling with Jeffrey Epstein? Because I can show you pictures and videos of Donald Trump. Does that not bother you at all?
It's a bad look, no doubt.
It definitely is a bad look. We agree on that.
But I mean, okay. Yeah, sure. It doesn't look good.
So what are your criticisms of Kamala Harris? I mean, you're making fun of her laugh. I've given you.
I didn't say anything about her laugh.
Well, you said it's fake joy.
You're painting.
Fake joy.
The campaign is based on the idea of joy.
Sure.
When I tuned in,
here's what I tell you.
You
know why I say that, sir? And you can tell me whether you disagree or not. I've been to both Trump rallies and Kamala Harris rallies. The Trump rally I went to a few months ago. Yeah, I try to hear both sides. That's why I'm keeping you on the line, because I think it's a good conversation. I went to the Trump rally, in Vegas. I saw a bunch of F Joe Biden shirts. I saw Confederate flags. By the way, I videoed this and I documented it. A lot of hatred, a lot of bigotry. And when I say joy, I went to the Harris rally several weeks ago. I didn't see any vulgarities. I didn't see any Confederate flags. All I saw was Waltz, and I saw Harris flags, and people were smiling, laughing, and having a good time. Now, I'm not saying that every person that goes to a Trump rally is filled with bigotry and hate, but the rally that I went to, there were a lot of people that were filled with bigotry and hate. And in my opinion, it's why the KKK, it's why the Proud Boys, and so many hate groups in this country support Donald Trump, including David Duke. So when I say joy, sir, I mean, I didn't feel any negativity or hatred when I went to the Harris rally. There were a lot of people enjoying themselves, having a good time. Do you disagree with that characterization?
Somewhat, yes, I do.
Okay, so tell me where I'm wrong. Go ahead.
I'm sure the 5,000 Palestinian protesters outside the DNC weren't.
There were no.
happy.
Okay, so hold on. Let's backtrack. There were no.
5,000. It's not that much.
Let's backtrack. I was just talking about rallies. There were no Palestinian protesters at any of the Harris rallies that I have been to. If there are,
that you've been to.
Okay, if there were protesters outside of a venue that are chanting horrible things, guess what? The Harris campaign doesn't approve. And guess what? You're making my argument for me. Those Palestinian people that were protesting are not voting for Kamala Harris. I'm talking about the supporters that support Donald Trump that were wearing the bigotry and the Confederate flag, which once Donald Trump, by the way, defended. The people that you're describing are not supporting Kamala Harris. I'm not talking about protesters. I'm talking about your supporters. You do understand.
Yeah, I mean,
you do understand.
No,
that those people are not.
Where you're coming
those people are not supporting Kamala Harris. How could you criticize Harris for that?
Sure. I mean, they're of the left, though. I mean, they could be supporting her.
How do you know that? How do you know they're on the left? Has somebody done a census? Has they interviewed these people? They could be non-voters. They could be MAGA supporters.
I would contend that most people that want a ceasefire and want a free Palestine would be more left-leaning. That might just be crazy, but it's just something that I feel like is the right thing that I'm saying.
Do you think a ceasefire is a bad idea?
No, I don't think that at all. But
guess who wants?
It's not going to end at a ceasefire. I'll tell you.
It hasn't ended since the mid '80s. I didn't say it was going to end, but Kamala Harris is for a ceasefire.
Well, so is Trump.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying. I mean,
ceasefire is a bullshit term.
Okay. Well, what else
Can
about?
I curse? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Stay away from that. That's okay. What else about Harris? Because I haven't really heard any substance from you. You haven't given me any Trump policies that you like. And on the coin,
flip. Look, immigration's a problem. Kamala's coming around and saying she wants to do more of a.
Sure.
Immigration's a big problem.
I agree.
Economy's a big problem.
I agree. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about immigration.
Sure.
What about the bipartisan bill where MAGA Republicans and Democrats sat at the table, and it was the biggest comprehensive border bill, which, by the way, was supported by the Border Patrol. They endorsed the bill, which would have been the most comprehensive in decades. And then Donald Trump picks up the phone and he calls his Republican senator friends and says, don't vote for this bill. Do you know why? Because it would have made Joe Biden look good, and he cares more about that than what is good for the country. So for people that want to talk about the border situation, which has, by the way, been an issue in this country for decades and decades and decades, here they have a bill that is put forth together with both sides, and Trump tells them to stick it.
But why, even without any sort of new bill you're talking about, why is it that we have 10,000 immigrants coming across our country, living horrible conditions,
Sure.
don't know what they're in for? Mm-hmm. They're in camps for 4 or 5 months. They figure out what to do with them.
Sure.
We throw money at them, lots of money at them, the second they get in, To do what? And I mean, I'm not saying they're taking all of our jobs, but I mean,
so I'm not going to, I hear you. And I'm not going to sit here and deny that we have major issues at the border, but we've had those
that came up when Biden became.
That is not true. Do you see, this is when I get frustrated. I was just going to say, we need to understand that Republicans and Democrats need to come together. Do you understand that there are less people crossing the border illegally now than there were when Trump left office? What you're saying is not true. It's not factually accurate.
I don't believe that.
Well, it's not my fault if you don't believe it. I'm pretty educated on these issues. I talk about them every day.
I live on the border, dude.
Okay, so because you live on the border, you know everything? I'm telling you, look it up. Right now, there are less people crossing the border illegally than there were under the Trump administration. Both parties have made mistakes. They're not perfect. We've had issues at the border for decades. I'm with you on that. But you can't tell me that all of a sudden Trump cares so much about this issue when there were undocumented immigrants that committed horrible crimes under his administration. We never heard about those crimes. Only under the Biden administration we hear about those crimes. And what I am telling you is there was a border bill that was put together with MAGA Republicans and Democrats. It was ready to go, the most comprehensive bill in decades. And Trump picked up the phone and told them not to pass it. Why wouldn't you have a problem with that? I agree with you. We have major problems at the border. Why wouldn't you agree with me that what Trump did was wrong? He put himself before the country.
I mean, that's a nice narrative. I don't know if that's exactly the way you're.
Why did he do it then? Why did he do it then? If you call it a narrative, because what I'm giving you is not a narrative, it's been confirmed by some. Do you know who Mr. Langford is? Donald Trump once called him one of the best Republicans when it came to border issues. He was the main guy that helped put this border bill together. And even Langford was shaking his head and agreeing with Joe Biden during the State of the Union speech when Joe Biden said that it was Donald Trump's fault and MAGA Republicans for why this bill wasn't passed. So that's not a narrative. Langford would agree with me on that. And many of the Republicans that helped put this bill together. I'm not giving you a narrative. I mean, I don't know why you would characterize it as that. Okay, so if you think it's a narrative, why did Donald Trump tell these senators to not pass this bill? It's just a bad bill? Is that why?
Well, from what I understand, there were things in the bill that weren't just immigration focused.
I agree.
There was a lot of pork they called in that bill. Right?
Okay, I agree. But sometimes when you pass bills, I think we'll agree on this, there's going to be positives and negatives, some give and take. For example, I'm going to give you another example real quickly, okay? So Republicans are saying Kamala Harris has changed her stance now on the border wall. She totally changed her stance on it and flip-flopped. That's a lie. You know what she did? She agreed with some of the MAGA Republicans to some of their, I guess you could call them demands, in putting more money towards building the wall in return for other things. It's called negotiations. She helped with those negotiations. But yet Trump picked up the phone and told these senators not to pass this bill. Listen, I appreciate the conversation, my friend. I will give you credit for calling into this show and having a discussion with me. I really do. You sound like a nice guy. The problem I have with this conversation, with all due respect, is I asked you why you were supporting Donald Trump. That was my first question. You said you like his policies. You didn't even say policy. You said policies. And you couldn't name me one policy that you know of. I find that extremely problematic. And then when I asked you your criticisms of Kamala Harris, you said you think she has fake joy, which would be a personality trait you don't like, which I would also disagree with. So here on one side, you like his policies. You can't name me one. On the other side, you don't like Kamala Harris because she has fake joy. I'll let the listeners decide on that one. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Paul. Paul is next up on PTL. What's up, Paul? who's an adjudicated rapist. He is liable sexual abuser, somebody who's had 30 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape. He's a 34 count felon. And in my opinion, based on just the things he's done in his life, he is a snake oil salesman. He attacks women on looks. He attacks POWs. I don't respect John McCain because he was captured. The suckers and losers comment, his behavior at Arlington Cemetery. And listen, I could name more. It's a long laundry list. But as a man of God, a family man like yourself, which I respect, how do you get behind somebody like that? That's forget about policy, just from a personal standpoint. How can you get behind somebody like that to be the leader of the free world, as you said, a good leader? And half of his administration didn't support him, including his former vice president. How can you get behind somebody like that? That's my question.
For me personally, I think Trump was, I think that was all political with the 34 counts, the charges that, the DA, Alvin Bragg, he brought forward. I thought that was very frivolous. They were looking for anything. I believe it was J. Edgar Hoover who made the comment talking about, show me the man, I'll find you a crime. I mean, they're just digging. They'll dig for anything. They see a crumb on the floor, they want it.
So he's innocent. You don't think he's done anything wrong?
I think lawfare and the justice system has been weaponized against people. I don't think that's right.
Why did he defy a subpoena for a year then, if he didn't do anything wrong? He defied a subpoena for a year just in the documents case alone.
I can't comment. We should get Giuliani. Isn't Giuliani was attorney at the time?
I'd love to get.
I can't answer that.
So okay. So let's start with that, and we don't even have to talk.
And in this day and age, with the Me Too movement, and let me just say, I support people. If you have had a very unfortunate circumstance, you've been raped, anything like that, I think you need to get help. I think you should be able to do something about that kind of situation. Mm-hmm. But, waiting 40 years and then just going and pointing a finger, because, that finger can be pointed at you next. I don't think that something doesn't add up there. I don't think
so.
That's
you don't
right.
think Bill Cosby's a rapist, even though literally 50 women have come forward that have said Bill Cosby has raped them?
Then why doesn't one more woman come out and just say, hey, if there's enough money and I don't have the moral, fortitude, let me just say he raped me too.
There's a lot of, you understand, Leo,
I think there's a challenge there. I don't think that's right.
There's a challenge, but there's a lot of different reasons why women don't come forward. That sometimes they're in fear of the man who might be in a very powerful position. They're afraid. They have guilt, shame. I've spoke to one of the women who was raped by Bill Cosby. She's a Las Vegas local. She came in studio. I asked her that same question. Why not come forward earlier? In a perfect world, Leo, I wish everybody would come forward earlier. But here's what we know. A jury of Donald Trump's peers said that Donald Trump was liable for sexual abuse. The judge characterized it as rape. Now, you can disagree with that outcome, but I think there's a history with Donald Trump when he bragged about sexual assault 7 times on the Jeffrey Epstein flight log list, when he literally bragged, and again, this goes back to the family man that you are, which I appreciate. He literally bragged on the Howard Stern show about going into pageant locker rooms of teenage women without even getting permission. He talked about that on the Howard Stern show. And I say to myself, forget about the legal stuff. Let's put that off to the side. Just from a moral standpoint, Leo, the behavior of Donald Trump. I surely you can't endorse that. Forget about whether you think he's a criminal or not. I'm willing to put that off to the side for argument's sake. What about the behavior? Attacking women on looks, attacking Gold Star families, attacking POWs, going into women's locker rooms and bragging and boasting and looking at naked women. Surely you can't condone that sort of behavior, right? You're not that man. That's not the behavior that you would do. That's not the behavior. I don't know. You have kids, right? That's not the behavior that you would want your children to aspire to be. So why have him be a leader, as you say, of the free world?
I would think